Todd Young Online presents Young Tales. Tales for the young and the young at heart. Today's story, Bulfinch's Mythology, the Oracles. In the ages when God still walked among men, when their voices could be heard in the rustle of leaves or the whisper of sacred waters, there were places where mortals could seek the counsel of the divine. These were the oracles, holy sites where the veil between the worlds was thinnest and the will of the gods could be revealed. The most famous of these lay far from the green banks of the Nile in the shadowed groves of Dodona and Epirus. Here the priestesses claimed to interpret the murmurs of the sacred oak whose leaves whispered messages from Zeus himself. Travelers came from across the known world to hear its voice carried on the wind, believing that the smallest rustle could foretell the fate of kings and empires. Farther still in the rugged lands of Greece stood Delphi, a place unlike any other. There in the temple of Apollo, the Pythia, a woman chosen by the god, would inhale the vapors rising from a fissure in the earth and in her trance speak words charged with the divine fire. Her prophecies, sometimes clear, often riddling, were treasured by all who heard them. Cities made war or peace by her counsel. Rulers rose or fell according to her voice. Egypt, too, had its oracles, though they were less shrouded in mystery and more bound to the rituals of the temples. The most celebrated was the oracle of Ammon in the Libyan desert, dedicated to a god the Greeks equated with Zeus. To reach it, a petitioner would travel across endless sands to the hidden oasis where priests, said to be guided by the god himself, would answer the questions brought before them. It was here that great conquerors, including Alexander the Great, came to seek confirmation of their divine right to rule. Yet oracles were not merely for kings. Farmers would ask when to plant their crops, sailors when to set sail, lovers if their unions would be blessed. The gods answered each in their own way, sometimes directly, sometimes in riddles meant to test the wisdom of the listener. In all these places, the faithful came not only for knowledge, but for a glimpse of something greater, the sense that, for a moment, the immortal world leaned close enough to touch the mortal one. And so the temples from Greece to the deserts of Libya, their tradition endured for centuries until the voices of the gods grew silent and the oracles, one by one, ceased to speak. And so our journey through the realms of gods and heroes draws to a close. The battles are fought, the quests fulfilled, and the voices of Ulysses, Aeneas, and all the rest fade into the distance. But as the echoes fade, another question lingers in the air. Where did these tales come from? Long before the written word, before temples rose and marble statues gleamed in the sun, there were only voices in the dark. Around hearth fires and under the open sky, elders told of Jupiter's thunder, Neptune's trident, Apollo's chariot, and Diana's silver bow. They told of mortal courage and folly, of love and vengeance, of triumph and downfall. These were not mere diversions. They were the lifeblood of people's memories. As centuries passed, the nameless forces of nature took on faces and forms. The storms, once only wind and rain, became Zeus's wrath. The fertile earth was the bounty of Ceres. The hunt belonged to Diana, and the shifting seas were the domain of Neptune. Slowly, the pantheon grew, gods and goddesses standing side by side, their stories carried forward on the breath of storytellers. Artists sought to give these stories shape. From quarries of white marble came Venus, serene and radiant, Apollo, poised with his lyre, and mighty Jupiter, kingly and unyielding. Bronze was poured into the likenesses of heroes, ivory and gold were fashioned into statues so resplendent that worshippers swore the gods themselves had stepped into them. In the dim light of temples, these figures watched over offerings of grain, wine, and incense, their stone eyes reflecting the hopes and fears of generations. And then there were these poets, guardians of memory. Homer's voice carried the fall of Troy and the wanderings of Ulysses across the centuries. Hesiod told of the birth of the world and the rise of Olympus. Virgil gave the Trojans new life in the founding of Rome, and Ovid wove the great tapestry of transformation in his metamorphoses. With every verse, they kept the gods alive, each passing the torch to the next. The temples may have fallen, the prayers may have ceased, yet the gods endure, in the marble that still stands against the sky, in the pages of ancient poetry, and in the stories retold to each new generation. For though kingdoms crumble and languages change, the legacy of the gods remains. They live on in thunder and in sea spray, in the clash of battle and the whisper of a lover's vow. They live on whenever a storyteller's voice dares to speak their names. And so, as we close the book on these ancient myths, remember, they are never truly gone. They wait in stone and in song for someone to tell their story again. And here's where we end for today. Young Tales is produced and narrated by Todd Young from Todd Young Online. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe and join us next time for another story. Thank you for your support.